Yeah, so my background was systems integration, application development, network design. So a lot of what I call classic information technology or operational technology background, which has been great. Joined defence sector 7 years ago. Yeah. I think every sector is absolutely different. There's no doubt about it. I think the defence sector has it's a really interesting sector. There's lots of challenges within the defence sector. They're very much of a purpose-driven sector. I think at the same time there are a lot of challenges, and that's fundamentally around the culture of innovation, the culture of ways of working, the diversification of the sector, and there's a lot happening right now in terms of how to tackle that. But the sector, like a lot of sector, needs to move on with the trends that are happening across the world, and especially as technology is changing and adapting at a rapid rate, the sector has to keep pace. Yeah, I think innovation is one of those words, and particularly in the defence sector, it's used quite a lot to mean many different things, and quite often people confuse the word innovation with, like, for example, ideation. I mean, ideation is the concept of building new ideas, but it's not innovation as such. And then there's also invention. And again, invention is the sort of creation of new technologies or products, but really the innovation is the joining together of ideas with an outcome. It's that interplay that then creates a clear objective from the idea, and that's where I think I would see innovation playing in. But I think, as I said at the Southwest Regional DSC cluster the other day, I think innovation is also about a philosophy. It's an approach. It's about ways of working. It's behaviours. And so, really what I look for in sort of the characteristics of innovative people are people who are, open to sharing, collaborative, people who trust one another. Because I think, in the spirit of open innovation and joint value networks, it's really a case of actually taking the best from multiple people or multiple organizations to actually join that value together in a way that creates, an amazing outcome. Not any one entity has all of the answers, right? I think it's critical, quite frankly. I think it's critical. I mean, there's no bounding to collaboration. I think collaboration should be for everybody, and you do see innovation centres pop up, and quite often they're themed around particular technologies or particular areas. I mean, again, there is an association with innovation with technology. I like to think of innovation of one area, technology, that's fine. It could be innovation in the way that we go about process, so process innovation, or it could be like business model innovation as well, a completely different approach. A good example being Netflix as an interesting angle of how you create a completely different business model that's disrupted a legacy business model, such as Blockbuster Video's approach to renting videos. So innovation can come from many different angles. And I think, to your point, where we've got themed innovation centres, there is a power in bringing them together. Yeah, well, I think it's all about networking, quite frankly. So it's people sometimes fall into the trap of thinking that a tool will do it all for you, and I don't think that's the case, really. I think you can't lose sight of human behaviour and the fact that humans need relationships to sort of coexist. And I think fundamentally, when I look at innovation centres or innovation cells or whatever the sort of trendy term is, actually bringing them together in a more common way, creating shared situational awareness of those innovation centres. It's just so important. And, you can't beat the face-to-face interaction, but at the same time, I think there's a lot that can be done around just sharing information in a transparent way around both the ideas that are being developed, but also, solutions that are being developed for different themes, Well, I mean, I think I don't believe sort of hoping is a way forward. I think you have to create the right environment for innovation. An environment doesn't need to be just the physical side of the environment. It's the ways of working. It's the incentivization. It's, how do you encourage people to sort of collaborate together? That, I think what we see quite a lot of is the fact that innovation comes from a particular mission or a purpose. So if you have people focused around a mission or a purpose, then you can get some really, really, great diverse inputs to come up with some really creative solutions. So I think purpose-driven innovation or mission-led innovation, it creates that focus, and I think that's quite important. So going back to innovation centres, if they are particularly themed around topic areas, I think that helps. Well, the defence sector is, doing a lot around actually diversifying the supply base, and that's because as a sector, it's a complex sector because you tend to have to need security clearance to work in the sector. So that's a barrier for entry into the sector. So that's problem number one. And so that creates ultimately, a set of organisations that have clearly invested in, security clearance and the security environments to allow them to cooperate with the defence customer, and that's understandable. But it doesn't allow diversification. So there's a lot more activity now happening with small to medium-sized enterprise in the sector. DASA is a good example, the Defence and Accelerator within MOD. They're doing a huge amount now around sort of nurturing and developing SMEs. And, I would say it's not just about SMEs as well. It's about joining SMEs and existing defence, industry players to actually come together. Because those defence industry players, they've got, understanding of the complexities of the defence landscape, which is really, really important. Then you get the energy and the passion from SMEs, and they've got some brilliant new ideas. And if you combine them together, then you get some great answers. But I don't think it's a case of one or the other. I think it's a case of actually, using both to join up. Sure. I mean, I think every sector is coming from some form of legacy way of working, and I think in the defence sector, like I've said, I think there's a there's a set of organisations that do a lot with the defence sector, but because of the fact that the pace of technology, science, and engineering is now developing so quickly, not one or not that collection of organisations, they can't keep up, right? So it needs, or the whole sector needs, that new thinking. So from an intellectual property point of view, yes, there are the standards within the MOD. There are also ways of working with intellectual property with a lot of the primes. But what I'm seeing now is a real shift whereby, if an organization like an SME has got some brilliant technology, whether it be software engineering or developed work around science, it's a case of bringing that technology into a particular prime, creating a sensible agreement around it, which could be a heads of terms, or it could be some form of NDA to actually just protect the SME's IP. And a lot of organizations now are actually very, very willing to work in that hybrid model. I think if you rewind 10 years, I don't think it was as obvious, or it wasn't happening to the same degree. But I think organizations now recognize that collaboration is crucial to success. So we have to come up with ways of partnering more effectively around, especially around the management of intellectual property. Well, I think there's lots of ways. I mean, I think if you look at the MOD as a whole, there's a lot of large research frameworks that exist, and the beauty of those research frameworks, like we're talking about innovation cells, is they tend to be themed around a particular area. It could be around complex weapons. It could be around, the maritime domain. It could be around sensing, and so the beauty of those research frameworks is, the lead for those research frameworks builds an ecosystem whereby all of those actors, whether they're universities, SMEs, small to medium size or large organizations, can collaborate and work together. So that creates the network, if you like. And I think, beyond that, there are other initiatives throughout the United Kingdom, whereby there are centres that are put together to, again, bring people together. And I think it's a case of, like I said, behaviourally recognising that all organisations need to change in order to sort of adapt to a new work environment. Well, I mean, I think for me, diversity is one of the key enablers for innovation, right? It's uh, I spent most of my career outside of the defence sector, so personally coming into the defence sector, it's been very interesting for me to bring different thinking from my background into the sector, and I think that's helped freshen things up in terms of my engagements. There's no doubt about it. But I think it's just one simple example of a different background or a different sector. I mean, I look at defence and do think that there is a lot to be done in the area of diversity. Like I've mentioned, there are constraints, especially with security clearance, that ultimately is a barrier around some aspects of diversity. But what we're starting to see is more collaborations come together. We've got the new AUKUS agreement that's been agreed between the UK, Australian, and the US governments, which is again bringing together collaboration and sharing across those three nations. But I think diversity as a whole, we just need more different thinking, different people, different backgrounds in the whole defence and national security space, because that's how you really tackle complex problems. It doesn't come from asking the same people the same questions all the time, because then you get the same answers. It genuinely needs shaking up so that we can actually drive a much more progressive sector. Oh, its broadness. It's a great question, right? I mean, we get, I think, some of the best projects and best solutions from bringing those diverse disciplines together. So, we could take our technologists, take our material scientists, take our, teams who are specializing in sensing technologies. And yeah, they may not tend to work with each other a lot, but if you bring them in on a crowdsourced problem, and get each of their ideas to actually solve a problem, they'll all come at it from a different point of view. And then the power is to see how each of those points of view can be combined together to really deliver a solution. I mean, a good area is the area of stealth technologies and what you can learn from biomimicry. So really learning from animals and learning from, how nature develops. And I think we've done a lot around the study of how nature develops and how we can actually take some of those properties, ways of working, to apply to camouflage techniques. So that's a really interesting angle of how you really need to think laterally about challenging solutions to challenging problems. Yeah,
question?
No, it's a good question, because it's a question that the whole sector is trying to tackle right now, and I think, I think defence as a sector is set up it's built around a certain operating approach and operating model, and I think that was also geared around quite a lot of, if you, big assets, large engineering. So if you're building a submarine, building a ship, building a tank, there is a particular acquisition cycle you need to go through, because the risk profile and costs around those types of large equipment programs are significant. I think what we're moving to now is what I would call a two-tone operating model, where we still need that. That's really important, but we also need to have a more rapid approach to technology-driven capability, because software can be built quickly, as we know. It doesn't need a lot of capital expenditure, and software, when fused with engineering and science, can deliver outcomes quickly. So if the risk profiles are different, and if it's assessed in a different way, then what we should be able to do is get the two cycles working together hand in hand. So we've got, yes, we can still acquire large capital programs, but at the same time, we can then start to deliver much more rapid based, smaller scale projects, but that could still have a huge impact in terms of outcomes for our warfighters. So I do think it's an area that, it's obviously under a fair bit of review within MOD right now. It's an exciting area for organisations. It's an exciting area for SMEs, because a lot of the feedback I get from SMEs is that, they want to see an increased pace across the defence and national security sector. So I think there's change afoot, which is positive. I think it's a case of embracing different approaches, looking at different industry sectors and how they tackle this problem, because defence and national security is not alone. There are other industry sectors that have similar challenges, and then coming up with an operating approach which ultimately can cater for both use cases. Well, I mean, I think for me, QinetiQ is only successful if our customers are successful, right? I think what we're trying to do is, we're not an organisation that's just going to just sit there and reply to what we've been asked to do. We want to disrupt. We want, in a positive way, disrupt, that is. So we want to nudge people on. We want to bring different thinking to all of our customers, whether that's in the UK, Australia, or in America. So, genuinely, I'm a big believer in thought leadership. I'm a big believer in, getting a point of view out there, and people can either disagree or agree with a point of view. That's no offence from our perspective, but we shouldn't be suppressing our thinking. It's a case of making sure that, when we do have an opinion on something, or have some ideas on something, or want to experiment, we can work with, in the case of MOD, work in a collaborative way to say, look, hey, we've got a point of view on this particular technology. Can we look at adapting policy, or can we look at driving some experimentation to actually move this forward with our partners? And I think, that it comes down to that sense right at the start, which I talked about around innovation. It is the culture of innovation that we're wanting to foster and develop, not just within QinetiQ, but within the sector. It's an interesting question, really. I mean, I've from my perspective, I'm a challenge-driven person, so I like the challenge of my role. I enjoy technology. I've always been a passionate technologist from when I was a boy. So, I think for me, where there's a challenge and where there is a sector which is very purpose-driven, that's what I like to do. And I've moved from a technology industry into the defence industry, and it's been illuminating. I've learned a lot across the last 7 years in the defence industry, which has been great. I think there's a lot of benefit from working with different sectors and also different size organisations. And I haven't got any particular thoughts or plans on what next for me personally, but ultimately, whilst I'm actually got challenges that that are presented to me, and I can apply what is quite a good problem-solving skill set to some of those challenges. That's what I enjoy doing. I'm a big believer that if you enjoy your job, then that's really, really important for whoever you are, whether you're an apprentice, whether you're mid-career or whether you're a senior exec. I think you've got to enjoy what you're doing. Well, I think you only have to look out in the world and see what's happening across all aspects of the world in terms of what's happening with Israel, Gaza, what's happening in Russia, with Ukraine, what's happening with China. There's a lot of challenge across the whole landscape, and you couple that challenge with what's happening with technology development. Well, technology development is happening rapidly. We're seeing some really, really fast-paced advancements, sort of enabled through higher power compute, coupled with large data sets. We've seen some really interesting developments with ChatGPT, for example. So I think really that whole landscape is changing. So I think what, as a sector, we need to do is recognize that things aren't static anymore, and that the world is changing, and therefore it's the purpose of certainly our organization or any organization to adapt in order to continue to survive in this world, right? And I think what we're wanting to do is take the best of those horizon scanning of new technologies, pull them in sometimes from other sectors, develop them ourselves within the sector as well, which we do a lot of. And actually make sure that we take the best and actually help our customers, whether they be in the UK, Australia, or America, to really make the best of what we've got to give them, so that they've got an advantage to protect sovereign interests. And that's the job of the defence sector.
Thank you, Mike. It's very interesting. I really appreciate the time that you've given.
No problem. Thank you.